Dana White used to roast boxing for one thing: champions getting fed easy fights, while the toughest matchups were avoided. Meanwhile, the UFC built its reputation around being the place where talent shines the brightest.
It's not what we do here. The best fight the best here.
With the rapid growth the organization has seen in recent years, its reputation as a true meritocracy may have its days numbered. And Ilia Topuria might be the perfect example of why.
I'm the world champion. I'm never gonna give him a chance to fight for the title.
But to understand how we got here, we need to go back to how this whole thing started. Boxing used to be the ruling force of combat sports in the 20th century. From epic fighters like Sugar Ray Leonard to straight cultural icons like Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson, the sport truly defined an era. Boxers themselves became more than just athletes. In fact, they used to be so popular that they influenced everything from pop culture to even politics.
I've said it once and I will say it again. The real enemies of my people are right here, not in Vietnam.
It was the golden age of boxing, a time when the sport was moving billions of dollars, cultivating fans in every corner of the earth. But over time, the cracks started showing. New organizations started appearing left and right in the 90s. Everything got a lot more fragmented. WBC, WBA, IBF, and later WBO each had their own champions. With several reports of shady business deals and promoters taking advantage of athletes, boxing went through its biggest transformation ever.
Boxing is fragmented. Boxing has multiple promoters, a tremendous amount of managers, and I'll tell you why I bring up managers in a little bit. Different networks, different sanctioning bodies. Imagine bringing 4 or 5 of these exclusive entities, each that can control its own domain in one sport without any regulations.
At the turn of the century, the US Congress passed the Muhammad Ali Act, a law designed to protect fighters from exploitation and restore integrity to the sport. Professional pugilism was now bound by rules and transparency requirements that gave the athletes themselves a lot more leverage and power. But at the very same time, something else was flying under the radar.
Basically what we want to do is we want to make the Super Bowl of mixed martial arts. We want to make it more fan-friendly, we want to get the crowd involved in it, and we want to bring back the best fighters in the world.
Dana White and the Fertittas had just bought a new organization in an entirely new game. And due to that, the UFC wasn't at all subject to the Ali Act. The difference eventually became night and day.
Lorenzo and I were going to get involved in boxing. They were down in Miami. I called them and said, I think this thing's in trouble. I think we could buy the UFC. And a month later, we owned the company.
It was certainly a huge bet. Boxing had mainstream legitimacy. Meanwhile, MMA still carried the stigma of being dismissed as human cockfighting. But as we all know by now, that gamble paid off beautifully. And throughout the years, Dana headed out for boxing and its promoters. So much so that contrasting the two sports became the biggest selling point for the new and far less popular promotion.
The most important thing is that it's the sport of fighting, and what boxing is sport of punching. That's all it is. And there's so many aspects of boxing that are really ineffective, that don't really work in a real fight.
As the years went by, the cracks in boxing became the foundation on which the UFC built its rise. Many will say to the detriment of their own fighters. At this point, it is undeniable to say that the rise of the UFC coincided with the decline of boxing. While the sweet science has never truly gone out of fashion, it has lost much of its cultural dominance. In fact, Dana White is open about the fact that he built his empire using this decline as his blueprint.
I've used boxing as the roadmap of what not to do. I looked at all the mistakes that they had made, I looked at some of the things that I thought they did right, and one of the things about the UFC is that those 3 letters, that brand, UFC plus some superstars equals success for everybody.
Right.
You know, and the difference is in boxing right now, you'll have a one-off fight. You know, 2 guys will fight and you won't see or hear anything again for a year, you know, a year and a half, and then there's another fight. With the UFC, inside that brand, you know, you build this brand and these fighters live inside this brand. You can keep promoting, it never stops, it keeps rolling, and you have these fans out there that you can keep hitting with the message, here's the next fight, here's the next guys that are coming up.
The fact that the UFC was able to grow into a multi-billion-dollar organization in less than 2 decades directly exposes the bittersweet duality of regulations and fight promotions. Boxing, under the Ali Act created a safer and more just environment for the athletes who were actually putting their health on the line. And by going directly against that, the UFC developed a novel and exciting product, which many will argue came at the expense of fighters.
Because of the Ali Act, there are laws that stipulate that you have to be paid a certain percentage or whatnot, contracts, whatever, and I can take you to court if I think you're being dishonest about it. In MMA, if Dana wants to make $100 million and pay you $2 million, he can do it. He can do it. He don't care if you generate $90 million. You don't have to take the fight. But if you don't take the fight, you don't fight. You're under contract with UFC.
The result was a promotion that had nearly all the best fighters in the world under one roster. Sure, the UFC's meritocracy wasn't always perfect. For example, Nick Diaz got to fight for the title despite coming off a loss, and Jacare Souza never got his shot because Bisping wanted to fight a 46-year-old man. But when compared to the disconnected state boxing was in, the difference was night and day. To their credit, the organization often put together fights, even if it went against its own best interest. Bilal Muhammad, John Fitch, fighters who weren't particularly exciting or popular to begin with, got to eventually compete for a title. Make no mistake, the system is still far from perfect, but it still had some semblance of justice, and that was always what Dana White prided itself for. He has even claimed that the big payouts that A-level boxing stars get are part of the reason why boxing fell off.
You know what happens when you get $37 million and you're a fighter? I don't want to get punched in the face. I got $37 million, man. I'm not getting punched in the face. This is ridiculous. We incentivize guys to fight. You get money to show and you get money to win. And then you get money for the best fight of the night, you get money for the best knockout, money for the best submission. You're incentivized.
For better or for worse, the UFC had a system in place, but the organization kept getting bigger and more lucrative. At one point, maybe they got too big to ignore. The year was 2010. Chael Sonnen needed nothing but charisma and good mic skills to make MMA go mainstream. His fights against Anderson Silva got worldwide attention, and both of them became bona fide stars.
Anderson Silva, you absolutely suck!
That moment essentially marked the beginning of a major shift in how the sport was perceived in the mainstream. And that trend continued throughout the years. Ronda Rousey, then Conor McGregor, the UFC was no longer on the sidelines. It was at the core of mainstream popularity. And that proved incredibly beneficial to the organization.
One of the things that we always do is we deliver on free TV or pay-per-view or whatever, and I want to continue to deliver. Everybody knows how important and how big this Fox deal is for the UFC and for the sport.
The UFC signed a deal with Fox for its streaming rights in 2011. It was their first step into full-scale expansion, and it was just the beginning. A few years later, the Fertittas sold their stake to WME for $4 billion, the largest sale in sports history at the time. The ESPN deal came 2 years later, worth $1.5 billion. And more recently, the UFC moved to Paramount after a groundbreaking $7.7 billion deal. Point being, the promotion became one of the most valuable sports leagues in the world. But this push also heightened the expectations. To chase that next deal, the product needed to get bigger, more popular, and more marketable.
As they've commercialized this, as they've popularized this further, it has just become a different product. It is no longer the same product. It cannot be viewed from the same lens that we viewed it from back then. And it's just a different thing, and that's okay. But it's a very, very, very popular thing, to Ariel's point, and the business of the UFC has never been better.
Conor McGregor set the precedent after becoming a double champ in 2016, and after that, it felt like everyone was chasing that same status. Henry Cejudo, Amanda Nunes, Daniel Cormier, Adesanya, and even GSP fought for a second title. It was truly the big money fight era, and it was fun while it lasted. That stretch also created some of MMA's biggest stars, even non-champions like Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal. But as time went by, fan fatigue started settling in. Perhaps the biggest recession indicator was TJ Dillashaw nearly dying on the scale to make 125 pounds, going for the double champ status, only to get knocked out in the first round a day later. But after a while, money fights and double championships started to lose their weight. It became a contradiction to the sport itself. entire divisions were put on hold so champions could sit around demanding big fights. And therefore, the little semblance of meritocracy that the organization had built itself around was all but gone. The name of the game seemed to be to kick the ladder from beneath you as soon as you reached the top.
Dana White, this is enough, man. Welcome to this is your new face to the UFC. His name is Henry Cejudo. He is the Olympic champ, flyweight champ, and now bantamweight champion of the world. And I want to get paid.
And even though the money fight craze has faded a bit, the underlying issue remains. The current generation of fighters pretty much grew up around watching champions, running the show, boasting several belts around, and making some significant money while at it. Now, they also want a piece of that pie. And the issue is, if you are a UFC champion not named Henry Cejudo, chances are you actually have more leverage than everyone thought. And if you don't know what I mean by that, it's covered in this video here. And that brings us to the modern dilemma. When the organization became too big to fail, the champions became too big to bully. Ilia Topuria is without a doubt one of the greatest talents of this generation. In fact, he may be one of the most skilled and technical fighters we've ever seen.
Arguably the best fighter in the sport. He is the most dynamic puncher I think I've ever seen in all of MMA in all my 20 years of watching.
Hyperbole.
It's not hyperbole.
From setup to delivery to power to patience to
footwork, everything.
And as you're pointing out, deep tape study.
Incredible tape study that he does. So there's that. I think he's easy to now. My hope is actually, I know I walked in the room today and everyone's like, oh, here comes the congratulations parade. But I actually have a different request. My request would be,
wow,
it's I think quite reasonable. I think it's in everyone's interest, the entire sport's interest, that we actually rally around this guy because he can inject life and status and gigantic moments of history into the sport if we help facilitate that through realizing he's the guy.
The thing is, he probably knows this. Confidence was never something he lacked. Even before touching UFC gold, he was already walking around calling himself the champion, despite the fact that he still had to beat one of the greatest ever, Alexander Volkanovski. The thing is, even prior to winning the belt, Topuria was already trying to call the shots.
Do you think if you beat Alex, if all goes according to how when you beat him, as you would say, it would be immediate rematch, or do you think you would fight someone else?
The way I'm gonna beat him, they don't even gonna ask me about the rematch.
Wow.
Yeah.
So who do you think it would be?
Conor McGregor.
Really?
And that was before he held any leverage. So one can imagine that nowadays, as a two-division champion, Topuria's confidence has only multiplied. After winning the lightweight title, this whole ordeal seemed like it was turned to 11.
You know, there's Arman Tsarukyan, there's Justin Gaethje. Is that the fight that you want more than anything else?
Yes. Yes, that's the fight that I want. With Putty, I'm really gonna enjoy kicking his ass.
Arman Tsarukyan was the #1 contender even before Topuria joined the lightweight division. And yet, when he's asked about facing him, he completely disregards it.
I'm never gonna give him a chance to fight for the title. I will be like, listen, if that's the case, take my belt.
The thing is, fighters handpicking their next move is not exclusive to Ilia. John Jones refused to face Aspinall despite the interim championship debacle. Islam Makhachev's manager has been actively campaigning for a fight against Usman, despite having 2 young contenders in line at welterweight. And even Tsarukyan himself has talked about how he will only look for money fights as soon as he gets the belt.
When I win the title, the sport thinks it's done. It's gonna start just business, and I'm gonna pick with who UFC pays me more. I'm gonna fight, and doesn't matter who it's gonna be.
Hey,
it's gonna be business things, not just the sport.
I like that. I like that.
So you're going from legacy to business. Is that what you're telling me, Arman?
No, right now it's a legacy to be a champion. It's my goal to be a champion. But after that, and then business. And then business. After this fight, when I'm champion, I'm just gonna think about money.
Make no mistake about it, the UFC will still have the last say about who gets to face who. They still hold most, if not all, the leverage. But in a sense, it's ironic to see how a sport built on a business strategy designed to prevent that very outcome could be drifting toward the same fate.
As you look at boxing and where it is now, everybody's undefeated, right? You have all these guys that are undefeated because they won't fight anybody. Now, in the UFC, whatever division you're in, you fought the toughest guys all the way up to become a world champion.
If you'd like to see more about Ilia Topuria and his incredible trajectory, check out that video next. Thank you for watching.